I'm going to turn it over to my partner. Senator Mike Lee has been a tireless and skilled advocate for surveillance reform, and I want to thank him for working together with all of us. Senator Lee.
Thanks so much, Senator Wyden. Thanks to all of you for being here. The protections that we now enjoy under the Fourth Amendment long predate 1791. In fact, they were well established before the United States became a country under English law. Inconsistently followed at times, yes, but they were well established. In 1763, the day before Easter, a member of British Parliament named John Wilkes was arrested. His offense was an interesting one. It had to do with his publication of a series sort of a magazine called the North Briton. It was North Briton number 45 that crossed a line. All of the North Briton episodes had included in one way or another some criticisms of King George III and his ministers. But number 45 crossed the line, in part because it criticized King George III's use of things like writs of assistance and general warrants. If you don't know what those are, they're basically things that say, go find people who have broken the law, search their homes, search their persons, seize whatever you find. That was it. No particularity requirement, no evidence of any kind of fact establishing probable cause. That's the problem we're dealing with here. A couple of, 2.5 centuries later, and the problem is still somewhat analogous to that. For the 12.5 years, almost 13 years that I've been in the Senate, I've been sounding the alarm on what I see as an excessively, increasingly cavalier approach taken by the FBI in connection with its use of these foreign intelligence authorities, and especially the way they approach our privacy. Look, these authorities exist for good reason. They exist so that we can obtain information on foreign adversaries, not on the American people. That is the distinction that we're concerned about here. We are not saying no 702. We are not saying no FISA. We're saying we need these authorities, but we need to reform these authorities because they've been abused, specifically insofar as they've been weaponized against Americans. Now, just this year, we've learned that the FBI illegally surveilled 19,000 donors to a congressional campaign. Happened to be focused on a lot of people who were involved in protests in the summer of 2020, people who just happened to be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, regardless of whether they ever came within a country mile of the Capitol, and that they've also surveilled at least one member of the House of Representatives and at least one member of the Senate. They must have figured as long as we're going to go after one house, we've got to make sure we get the other one. I wonder whether they also had a bipartisan arrangement. I don't know, because to the best of my knowledge, we don't know who those members of Congress were. Now, they call this sort of thing non-compliance. I find that clever. It's also highly euphemistic and downright insulting, frankly. Non-compliance is what happens when somebody forgets, despite their best efforts, to fill out a form, or they forget to put a period at the end of a sentence when they should have put one. But when the FBI snoops on the American people without a warrant, it's not a blunder. It's a breach of trust, and it's a violation of the Constitution. So asking for trust while trampling on the rights of Americans isn't oversight. It's oversight turned a blind eye. The only thing FBI seems eager to fix is getting caught. And so that's why we've got to act here and now. Hundreds of thousands of warrantless searches a year, hundreds of thousands. That's very substantial. When every illegal search violates an American's constitutional rights, the right number for that is 0. It should be 0. Our privacy isn't just a suggestion, it is in fact a constitutional guarantee. Look, the clock's ticking on 702. It's set to expire and it's time for a trade. We will vote to reauthorize, but only with rules that make Uncle Sam get a warrant before entering our digital domains, our homes, our papers, our persons. That is, after all, where most Americans store nearly all of their papers these days, is in digital form. So the Government Surveillance Reform Act would end warrantless backdoor searches of Americans within this Section 702 database, prohibit the targeting of foreigners for the purposes of collecting Americans' communications, and ensure intelligence agencies' employees are in fact held accountable when they violate these things. Because right now, they sort of like the unarmed English Bobby being unarmed upon seeing a violation of the law says stop, or I'll yell stop again. But it sounds that much more gentle given the British accent going along with it. We're not going to put up with this anymore. We're going to reform it, and that's what this bill does. It also protects American civil liberties by expanding the amicus curiae provisions and expanding amici participation in the FISA Court proceedings and requiring DOJ to provide any material exculpatory evidence to the FISA Court. We require this in other courts. We ought to require it in the FISA Court. This ensures that the government can't just get around these statutory and constitutional protections by conducting also the same type of thing they'd otherwise do through a third party. It's still the government snooping on you. They're still subject to the Fourth Amendment. Just because they go through a third party doesn't give them a free pass. Our central message here is you can't bypass the Fourth Amendment. When you do, bad things happen. John Wilkes brought suit against Lord Halifax, who ordered that search and his seizure. He won. Others sued who were similarly injured. Collectively, they recovered 100,000 pounds, which is many millions of dollars in today's dollars. Today, we're going to have another revolution based on North Britain number 45, but for the modern era. Thank you.